Welcome to This Explainer. Listen, if you're tuning in today, chances are you're dealing with a very specific, kind of stressful math problem. A growing family stuffed inside a shrinking house. The walls literally feel like they're closing in. You know you need more space, but moving, it just isn't in the cards right now. So you look out at your property and wonder, okay, should we bump out into the yard, build up a second story, or maybe construct a completely detached unit? Well, today we're breaking down the structural paths to expanding your home so you can make the absolute smartest choice for your property and, of course, your wallet.
And speaking of your wallet, let's just rip the Band-Aid right off. $210,000. Yep, that is the current national average for a standard 24 by 16 foot primary suite addition. The sticker shock is incredibly real, isn't it? A full addition is a major capital project, and there is just no getting around that initial gasp when you see the bottom line.
Okay, let's dive into this, because that $210,000, that's really just an average. Depending on what you're actually doing, a mid-range primary suite can start around $185,000, but an upscale version with custom finishes can easily climb well past $400,000. So why such a massive swing? Well, first, we need to bust a major industry myth. When you see addition costs quoted as a flat cost per square foot, be extremely skeptical. I mean it. That metric works great for tract home builders strapping the exact same house on empty dirt over and over again. But for custom additions on existing homes, no way. A small, highly complex bathroom bump out can run you $800 a square foot, while a simple family room might just be $300. It is all about the variables.
So, here's our roadmap. First, we'll look at the real costs driving your addition. Second, up, out, or detached. Third, the hidden budget killers. Fourth, 3 questions for contractors. And finally, what changed in 2026?
All right, Section 1, the real addition costs. Specifically, we're talking about labor, which eats up 40 to 50% of your budget, and your existing foundation. These are the 2 massive factors that dictate everything, because your existing foundation literally determines what you can and cannot build.
Section 2. Up, out, or detached. Choosing your path.
But before we break these down, we gotta talk timelines, because time is money, right? A typical primary suite addition takes about 6 to 9 months from the day you break ground to the final inspection. But wait, that doesn't include the design and permitting phase. You need to tack on another 3 to 6 months just for that. Now let's compare our 3 paths. Building up often seems like the smartest move, because hey, you save on excavating a new foundation. But actually, scratch that. Going up is not always cheaper. It demands massive structural reinforcement of the floor below just to carry the weight, plus an entirely new roof. On the other hand, building out is generally cheaper per square foot, but only if you have a simple foundation and an accessible lot, because it requires serious site work. Finally, building detached, like an ADU. This means pouring its own separate foundation and running new utilities, which adds a huge upfront cost. However, it offers potential rental income down the line and means way less disruption to your daily life while the power tools are running. The takeaway here? Always get a structural engineer's assessment before assuming one path is naturally cheaper than the others.
Which brings us to Section 3, the hidden budget killers, uncovering the iceberg concept.
Listen, the absolute biggest mistake you can make as a homeowner is focusing all your attention on the tip of the iceberg. You know, the visible finishes, the tile, the paint, that fancy sink you saw online. The items that will completely destroy your budget are the massive, unavoidable costs buried deep underground or hidden right behind the drywall. We can slice these hidden budget killers into 3 distinct categories: soft costs, site work, and structural surprises. Opening up the walls of an older home is basically a gamble. You might uncover dry rot, framing that is way behind modern code, or an ancient knob and tube electrical system. Because of this, a 10 to 15% contingency budget isn't just a polite suggestion for homes over 30 years old. It is the absolute bare minimum you need to have tucked away.
Let's zoom in on those soft costs for a second. These are the checks you're writing before a single hammer ever swings. We're talking about architectural drawings, because yes, any project changing your footprint requires a licensed architect or building designer, plus structural engineering reports, soil tests, and local permit fees. These soft costs will drain $15,000 to $30,000 from your budget before you even break ground. Let that sink in.
Next up is site work. If you're bumping out or building detached, you have to prep the land. That means paying for excavation, grading, and potentially trenching for brand new sewer and water lines. And here's a massive hidden cost that catches so many people off guard: your electrical panel. If your home's main panel can't handle the new load of your addition, you're instantly looking at another $5,000 hit just for an electrical service upgrade.
Section 4. 3 questions for contractors.
Time to vet like a pro.
So how do we protect ourselves from all this? Well, by taking back the power. To avoid a total contractor nightmare, you can't just ask for references. You have to ask hard technical questions about process and structure to see if the person standing in your kitchen thinks like a master builder or if they're just a smooth salesman. Here's your 1-2-3 framework. Step 1. Ask them to trace the load path. Step 2. Ask for their plan regarding site access and staging. Seriously, if they don't have a logistics plan to protect your driveway and manage heavy equipment, they're going to destroy your landscaping and probably your relationship with your neighbors. And step 3. Ask them how they establish a scope lock date. Let's look a little closer at the first and last of these. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the concept of a continuous load path. This is the structural continuity from the roof rafters down through the walls and anchoring firmly into the foundation. It's literally what keeps your house standing up against gravity, wind, and weather. An experienced contractor should be able to take a pen, point right at the architectural plans, and trace exactly how the weight of your new roof trusses transfers down through the studs, into the rim joist, and right down to the new foundation. Honestly, if they can't trace it, they shouldn't build it.
And regarding that scope lock date, you want a contractor who gives you a strict, hard deadline to finalize all your decisions. Plumbing, tile, paint colors, the whole shebang. If they look at you and say something like, "We need all your selections finalized by the end of week 4, that should be music to your ears." A strict scope lock date prevents the absolute #1 cause of budget overruns, those sneaky mid-project change orders.
Finally, Section 5, What Changed in 2026? A look at the current landscape.
The construction world moves crazy fast, and if you pulled a quote back in 2024, I guarantee you the landscape looks very, very different today in 2026. First, the incredibly good news. The supply chain has finally caught up. Back in 2024, you were looking at agonizing 6-month waits just for basic materials. Today, lead times for windows, roof trusses, and engineered lumber are back down to a very normal, very manageable 6 to 8 weeks. This makes keeping your project on schedule infinitely easier.
Financially, things are a lot more predictable now too. Home equity lines of credit, or HELOCs, have stabilized right around the 4 to 5% range. Plus, Inflation Reduction Act tax credits are still on the table if you opt for high-efficiency upgrades like heat pumps or new windows. Keep in mind, though, more regions have adopted the stricter 2024 International Residential Code. Now, this adds a bit of cost for enhanced insulation and structural reinforcement, but it yields a much safer, tighter home. And the best part? Despite the upfront costs, nationally, homeowners can still expect to recoup a solid 50 to 65% of their mid-range addition costs at resale.
And this brilliantly illustrates what the Renology team points out in their analysis. They say, a deck that doesn't ledger into solid framing isn't a deck, it's a porch waiting to fall. An addition is exactly the same concept. You can buy the most beautiful fixtures in the world, but if the underlying box they sit inside isn't structurally sound, if it isn't tied together perfectly from the roof down to the footing, you haven't built a dream space, you've just built a very, very expensive problem.
Because at the end of the day, an addition is a structural project first and foremost. A solid, weatherproof, properly tied-in shell, that's 90% of the job right there. We homeowners get so fixated on the fun stuff, like the walk-in showers and the giant kitchen islands. But the real project, the thing you are truly paying for, is the concrete, the bolts, and the beams. Get the shell right, and the finishes are easy.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. Before you spend a single weekend picking out subway tile or browsing through a million paint swatches, you need to ask yourself and your structural engineer one vital question. Does your current foundation actually have the structural capacity to handle your dream addition? Figure out your foundation first, follow that load path, vet your builders carefully, and you'll be well on your way to finally claiming that much-needed space. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.